right. Hello, sports fans. Welcome in. Welcome in. We're new session, new episode of an untitled chat. I put a title in there, but it's not an accurate one. We're still working on a name. Um, Lots going on this week. What do you know there? Who cares?
I know nothing. That was a bad Sergeant Schultz impression.
Yes. For you that don't know, ask your parents who that is and what that is. Hogan's Heroes, I think, was a television show in the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not old.
Unfortunately, you're that old. Is that what you said?
Yep, I'm not old, and I go back to the 70s. I'm referencing a TV show from the 70s.
Well, I'm that old because I knew right away what it was you're talking about. So,
Yeah, I wasn't going to throw you under that train or that bus. I was going to let you do that on your own.
yeah, yeah. Um,
You could have pleaded, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not that old. You could have done that, but
wait, who is that? What is that? I don't know.
yeah, yeah. So,
So when we haven't talked, I'm sure my feed right is. Well, let's go on here. Um, Not sure what's happening on Thursday, um, just yet. Who cares is saying that he's got conflicting schedule going on, so it may be just me going by myself, or maybe we'll just put it off for a week. And true story, I don't know. No, I'll probably run on Thursday, just a regular schedule as it were, but we'll figure it out. So I think that's on. That's coming up. So I'm in the shower, right? This is the shit that I think about. I'm in the shower the other day, yesterday, and as I'm washing my hair, I'm doing the math on my Calgary Flames. Obviously, as you know, I wear my jersey for this program, but I do wear it, my jersey, on game days, which is tonight. I kind of did the math, and I'm pretty sure that there's 15 games left in the season.
mhm.
As of yesterday, when I looked it up, it might have changed because it was like in the afternoon, right? Noonish or something when I was showering. So this, I don't know if Edmonton played last night, but as of yesterday, when I Googled this, when I looked up the standings, Calgary was 9 points behind the Edmonton Oilers. And the
I fell.
Edmonton Oilers are in the wild card spot in our division.
They
So
must have picked up a couple of points in because I thought I looked and I saw them back 7 points. So
which could
maybe,
very well be
okay,
right.
yeah, so maybe
Either way,
somebody's picked up a couple of points. Okay.
so well, I'm just going to look it up now because now, now I got to know for sure. Uh, where are we at? It's games played, goals. Where's the points? Here we go. So the Oilers are at 70 points with the Kraken at 81, right? And we, Calgary Flames, are 7 points behind, right? So now that changes my math a little bit because when I was doing the math yesterday, if we're 9 points behind, we have to win 5 of those games just to tie, right?
Right.
And then we have to split those games. Or sorry, 5 of those games would put us 1 point ahead of Edmonton, and then we would have to split the other games. So that means
Mhm.
we need Edmonton to lose 10 games of the remaining 15, and we have to win 10, and they have to lose 10. That's a really, really good stat.
Or the Edmonton Oilers, yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, if an NHL team, it doesn't matter any team, if any team can win 60% of their games, they probably deserve to win the Stanley Cup, right?
Yeah. Huh?
I mean, because that's absolutely wild that it's you've allowed yourself to get this far at the end of it, right? At the end of the season. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, that's top points in our in the Western Conference is Golden Knights at 88, Dallas Stars at 87, right? Kings are at 85, Wilds at 84, Kraken at 81, the Avalanche, and the Oilers at 80, and the Jets at 79, right? So that's the top eight teams. You also just saw a stat the other day. What was it that of the 80? No, we just passed a 54-year-old record of the most games where we've outshot teams that outshoot their opponents by more than 10 goals or 10 shots and lose. We just set the record, and it was at 19. We've had 19 games where we've outshot our opponents by 10 shots or more and lost.
And still lose, yeah.
And still lost, yeah. That's absolutely wild. So something has to change in the off season now, right? I'm pretty sure there'll be a goalie change for a couple of different reasons. I'm pretty sure Dan Vladar will have to leave. And it's not that on paper Vladar is playing better than Markstrom, but it comes down to salary cap. I think Vladar will be moving in the offseason, which means Dustin Wolf from the Wranglers farm team here in Calgary, he'll be getting his shot. That being said, Friday, okay. March 31st. There's my tickets to go see the Wranglers.
Okay, yeah.
It's 1:00 in the afternoon, so Mrs. Frostmage and I are going to be doing some day drinking. All those little kids be running around, and there's going to be the 4 adults, and we're just going to be fucking hammered. 1:00 in the afternoon. It's going to be awesome. All right.
Okay.
Can you see my screen? You see this, right?
I can see your news article. Yeah.
Okay. Let's start the day. You want to do the first one?
No, you go.
Okay. Let's refresh and we'll start it up. What is this one? This is an op-ed piece. Lily, this is out of Toronto, the Toronto Sun. NDP candidate Sarah Yama's record shows she isn't fit for public office. Now, I actually read this article, so I don't want to share. So we need you to go first, I think. Because I thought this was interesting. Okay, go ahead.
I have not even seen the title, like the headline in the news. So I'm completely blind on this one. I am not the least bit aware of this NDP candidate, which is not, I don't know most of the candidates. So, I mean, that doesn't say anything in itself. Some kind of record. What, her
I'd be shocked if you knew who this person was.
Yeah.
Because it's out of Toronto, right? So this means it's an NDP candidate out of Ontario.
And that could make it even worse, But I couldn't, much like I can't name you, I could probably name you more Flames players than I could people in Alberta ridings and all, so.
Regardless of the party.
Either of those, regardless of the party.
Yeah.
Shows you how much I pay attention to either of those.
Well, as it turns out, I'm wearing a Calgary Flames jersey because I pay attention to the Calgary Flames. I've watched more than 60 games.
You have no shame.
Yeah, well, yeah. I also have a degree in political science, so this is why I was interested in this. Why I opened this article. All right.
I have no idea what record they're referring to. Obviously, whatever it is, this reporter here, this news person, doesn't feel she's fit for public office. I couldn't begin to comment on this one. Couldn't go anywhere. I have no idea. Like total blank. There's just nothing to extrapolate from.
Yeah, it's not very clear about anything of what she's done just from that title, right? Again, this is an op-ed piece. We don't know who Brian Lilly is, other than he writes for Toronto Sun. Sorry, we don't know if he's what his background is, if he's a journalist or if he's just a rando or person writing in, assuming that this picture here is of her, right? So this,
Seem reasonable.
so I mean, I've shared. Who cares? You and I have talked a lot about this over the years. On the x-axis, you have liberals on the left and conservative on the right. So, and then everywhere in between there is just a varying degree of one of those two things, right? So left to center, you're liberal, and right of center, you're going to be conservative, no matter how far that is. And then you have an economic piece on the y-axis, right? So starting at the top, moving down, you have capitalism, fascism, socialism, and communism. So two in the top above center and two below center. And it's just somewhere in between there, right? So once you have this box, now you can plug in where people you should expect them to land based on whether they're conservative or liberal. And the NDP is actually an economic movement, not a political movement, right? You can only be conservative or liberal. And then once you know what the NDP are, an economic movement, they're socialists, more or less. So they're under like the bottom half of it, and they're probably liberal. So they're beyond. If you go in a circle, 1, 2, 3, 4, they're probably in the bottom quadrant of our box that we just decided. Okay, so with that framework, now we know where people vote and which parties, like where they land about anything. You can do this on presidents, prime ministers, countries, anytime, any period. Throughout history, you know where they land on this. This woman here,
Very quickly,
Yeah.
and interject and build on what you're saying. It needs to be understood that though we call our two main political parties liberals and conservatives, as you always say, big L and little L.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So it needs to be clarified that you're not establishing the line as being liberal party on one side and conservative
That's
party
correct,
on the other side. It's the ideology of being liberal, and that group of people decided what better name than to name
Yeah.
themselves Liberal Party,
Not
while
very
the other
original.
side, conservatives, said, "Oh, we should name ourselves the Conservative Party."
Yeah.
So I want to distinguish because hopefully we're going to have people that are not Canadians
Yeah,
and then get confused, and even the Canadians might get confused that you're not actually referring
To the parties.
party.
yeah. Good call there.
when
Who
you
cares?
talk
Good
about the
call.
liberal versus the conservative. So I wanted to just clarify that. I'll let you carry on.
If you use that distinction, as you're saying there, liberals on the left, the Liberal Party is on the left, and the Conservative Party is on the right. It's just a matter of where they're on that line. Conversely, it's also
Right.
the Democrats on the left, which is a Liberal Party, and the Republicans, which is a Conservative Party, they're on the right. If you want to use that distinction.
Yeah,
Now, you're right,
yeah.
but it's small
What
L,
needs to
small
be said
C.
then- Yeah, what needs to be said then is that the NDP is also on the liberal side of the line.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So if you just have the x-axis, the Liberal Party, or sorry, the NDP party is on the liberal side, and then you throw in their economic views. They're more socialist, so they would drop down on the y-axis.
Right.
Okay. So this woman here. So this is why that. So once you know that, when you read this article here, Lily here, I think, misconstrues or doesn't know the difference between these two things, right? Inherently, there's nothing wrong with fascism, right? Fascism is nothing but an economic system, right? The same way that capitalism or communism, right? There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's when you,
And this is where things like fascism and communism get distorted because they're economics means, and yet
yeah,
we tie them to various governments
yes,
worldwide and make an association, and then suddenly, oh, we hate commies, when really what you're talking about is an economic
yeah.
system, so carry on.
So people, that is absolutely bang on. Who cares? That's Hammer hitting the nail right on there. People confuse,
Yeah, we've had
right?
a number of conversations over beers
Yeah.
regarding these issues. So, I mean,
Yeah.
uh,
I forgot to start the timer. Shit. That's okay. This one's going to take a little bit longer anyway.
yeah.
So this, and people do that all over the place, including learned people, right? There was one guy that wrote a book, and I'm like, who is this guy, and why would we pay attention to him? He teaches. He's a professor at a university, and he got it wrong. Right? He's not a political science instructor at a university. He's some other type of professor, but he wrote a whole book on why why fascism is bad. And I'm like, and he's linking or making the same link that Who Cares is talking about between fascism and a political party, and it's that's erroneous. This guy here, Lily, does the exact same thing. All right, let's scroll down here. The big question is that residents of Hamilton, so there's that's a suburb of Toronto, more or less. Maybe it's a couple hours out. Actually, it's its own city, right?
It's less than an hour out of Toronto, and it's a city on its own.
It's on its own, yeah.
Yeah, I used to live in Burlington. Burlington is one step over
Okay.
away from Toronto. So, yeah.
Can Hamilton be considered part of the GTA?
I think when you're talking about it, you're talking about that whole area for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
All the way down to like Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls,
greater area, but it's not really a suburb of Toronto. It's its own city, its own council.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a bunch of cities there. But
Right. They all just belong.
Yeah.
Toronto, Mississauga, Oakville, Burlington, Hamilton, all the way into St. Catharines down to Niagara Falls.
Yeah. That's right. The big question that residents of Hamilton need to ask is whether they want someone as radical. So again, that's it, right? She's radical as this woman representing them. She's an NDP candidate in the provincial by-election to be held Thursday, and she's widely expected to win. Will voters be casting votes based exclusively on team color? That's likely the only way that she can win. Blind loyalty to a party that has represented the area since 1990. Former leader. Even represent the area from here to here when she resigned to run as for mayor. Say what you want about this woman, the mayor. She wasn't a radical, but it looks like voters are about to replace her with one. This woman here, this in the picture, was in the Young Communist League a few years ago during her university years. So again, communism is just an economic system. And that inherently, there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just how you view you should spend your money. That's all it is, right? Now there may be some problems with choosing communism over capitalism, right? And the merits of that discussion is separate. But the fact that she belonged to young communists, so what, right? Who cares? It's just how she wants to spend her money, and that's not unusual, by the way. Students, young people's universities, a lot of them have communist views, right? They're very socialistic, and everyone should share the money, and it's because they don't have any, right? Students don't have any money.
Right.
And then once they buy their first car or buy their first house, acquiring goods, as it were, that view changes very quickly because now they don't want to share their house with 17 people at the same time. They want to have their own space, right? That's the difference. So, so until recently, she was not aligned with the NDP. And many of her now deleted social media posts expressed the idea that the New Democrats were not mainstream or radical enough. Okay, so this is why this Lily guy, the author of this, doesn't quite understand here, I think, right? The NDP are socialists, and the socialists and the Democrat and the communists are very closely aligned from an economic standpoint, in the same way that fascism. Fascism and capitalism are very closely aligned. There's only one minor difference between the two, right? People don't understand that, but that's it. Socialism and communism are very closely aligned. There's just minor changes, minor sets.
Oh, that's why they're both south of the X line in the graph.
That's exactly right. And this is why the other side, right? So the fact that this woman says that she belonged to the Communist League, and she wasn't until recently she was not aligned with the NDP. That's actually incorrect, right? Not even knowing this woman, she has to be aligned because her economic views are closely tied between socialism and communism. For sure, for sure, she's like, it's not as far as this guy, if Lily is making it sound out to be, right? Okay, so so here's kind of why this guy thinks. I'm assuming it's a he, by the way, because his name is Brian. But we're not going to assume his gender or anything like that. Oh, less than a year ago, this woman was denouncing the mayor for praising police efforts to keep Scarborough Elementary safe after a man was spotted near the location with a gun. As a special investigations report indicated, police called man and called the man to drop the gun. Instead, he pointed at them and they fired, killing him. While the mayor praised the police on Twitter for keeping the school safe, that woman that we just saw, her picture there, blasted the actions of the officers and the mayor. This seriously needs to be deleted. She retweeted in response to the mayor. A 27-year-old with a BB gun was killed, not something to celebrate. The cops murdered someone. Well, you know how I feel about the police. Who cares? I have very conservative views on some of these things, and over the last couple of years, become a little bit more right wing, as it were.
Right.
You know, I don't think the police should do a lot of the things that they do. Right? Who cares? You live downtown, or just off of downtown in Calgary. You're walking along the street, and you said that the police just stopped you and asked you for ID. Well, that's actually a constitutional violation. They're not allowed to do that. Right? It's stuff like that. I do think, however, in this case, the police, there's someone they don't know that has a weapon. They identified it as a weapon. They told the guy to put it down. And in the heat of the moment, it certainly looks like a gun, right? And it's a BB gun, so it doesn't have the little yellow, orange, I guess it's orange painting on it to identify it as a toy. The police just see it. He raised it up at him, and they shot back. Like they shot before they did. I think in this case, the police are probably justified in their response, right? It just depends on some other things, I guess. A sidebar, I just watched a Twitch yesterday or the day before where 4 police officers pulled this guy over in the U.S., tinted windows. Hello, Hippie Elf. Good morning. No, all talkie today. Yeah, sorry. Yes, today's talk radio for an hour, just so you know. And so the police told him to get out of the car. The car was blocked in. He couldn't go anywhere. The police pulled their weapons on him, told him to get out of the car. And one cop saw that there was a gun on the floor. So the one cop yells out, "Gun," and they all fired on this guy, right? And they ultimately killed him. So the body cam you see here is, this all happens like in split seconds. So the 3 cops fire on this guy 6 to 8 times. The one guy with the body cam tries to discharge his weapon. He can't. He spits out the clip, puts in another clip, and then he fires. So all of that takes place in 2 seconds or so, right? You actually see, if you aim a weapon, what do you think's going to happen? Well, I don't know if this guy actually picks up the weapon. The cop just yells out that he sees a weapon. My point is that this other cop, after everyone else had shot at this guy, a full 2 seconds after it, he's now shot on it. You can actually see another cop put his arm on his forearm to say, because it's not verbal, you can't hear it. He says something to him. So everyone else is shot except for the guy that's the body cam. Then he shoots, and then you see the arm on there saying you don't have to shoot, right? That's probably excessive, right? The other 3 cops have already discharged 6 to 8 shots at this guy. Why did that cop have to do it as well? Right? So that's probably excessive. In the case of this story here, again, as I said, I'm not a huge. I think the police are justified in this instance, right? So 27-year-old with a BB gun was killed, not something to celebrate. The cops murdered someone. Yeah, because he did something. As Hippie here says, if you aim a weapon, what do you think is going to happen? Yeah, yeah, right. And so I find it difficult not to validate that. So in the end, the tweet was deleted, on and on and on. In the video still found online, that woman was seen at a 2021 protest in Toronto claiming the police in Hamilton protect Nazis, while also making strange statements about Israel and killings around the world. Over and over, and I quote here, over and over again, the Hamilton police protect Nazism in our city and continue to target Black Muslims and Palestinians, she said moments before turning on. All right, so this is a case of, as Who Cares You just said, this woman is misconstruing or confusing an economic ideology with a party. People just hear fascism and they immediately think of Nazi Germany.
Right.
And that's not right, because fascism is just an economic system, the same way that capitalism and communism is. There's nothing inherently wrong with it.
I don't have the political background, and they may be correct in making that connection to Nazi Germany, but they're making it for the wrong reason, right? And then they're extrapolating everything about Nazi Germany has to do with fascism, and that's where they're wrong as well. So while you may be able to say that the government under Nazi Germany was a fascist government, you have to understand what made them fascist, and you can't say because of all these other reasons tie that into being fascist. Did I make that make sense? It's
No, it did to me.
yeah, right. Okay. It kind of made sense to me, but I don't know if it really made sense. But yes, they were a fascist government, but you can't reverse it, I guess is what I'm saying, and take everything that Nazi Germany government was and say it's because they're fascists. So
yeah, it's
so anyway,
because they're
public record is that she's going on public record saying things like the Hamilton Police Service is protecting Nazis and allowing injustice towards Muslims, and you said someone else.
Palestinians.
Palestinians, yeah. So is this basically what the article is about? Is that she's going on record for these things, going on record about the police? You said she was at a rally in Toronto?
Yeah, rally in Toronto in 2021.
Okay, so, and this is what this, you said Brian Lilly, he's basing his opinion on that she's not fit for public office based on the things that she's saying.
Yeah, I think that's his contention here, right? He said in the opening, in the title, that she's not record. She isn't fit for public office, and I suspect it's because of those statements right there, right?
Yeah.
We don't know if there's Nazis in there, that because Nazism is a political party. That's really what she's linking here, right? I mean, we have that here. Nazis thought process here in the province of Alberta, right? 20 years ago or something like that, in I think Caroline, which is a suburb, a village or so, I don't know, 150 kilometers northwest of Calgary. That kind of came out, and we just kind of, I don't even think we kibosh it, right? And how can you, other than highlighting it, bring it to the sanitation of the sun? You guys have a bunch of Nazis living here and you guys didn't do anything, which means, you're either part of them or supporting of them. Why are you doing that? Right? That's kind of the point. This woman, easy, meaning Israel, blah, 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 faced claims of anti-Semitism, including from Jewish groups like has never answered specific questions. Just issued a blanket statement saying she condemns anti-Semitism. But she's faced claims but she is putting out papers saying she doesn't support. Even taking her at her word on that issue, her other comments about police, claims that they kill babies across the province or defend Nazism in Hamilton, are not backed up by any facts. Well, and there's the kicker, right? It's people have lots of opinions about a lot of different things, and that's usually what most people spout, right? They're spouting their opinions on whatever it is. So a lot of people are involved in radical politics while at university, just like I said, right? They're young peoples and don't know anything about anything, and they want to make the world a better place and share everything until they buy their first car, their first house, and then they have to share those goods with 17 other people. Her record shows she's not grown out of a radical phase and holds views most voters would find aberrant. Yet, due to a social media purge, the size and depth of which I've never seen for a single candidate, the NDP are trying to keep her radical side from voters. Well, I mean, you can't hide who you are. So, just because you take these things down off of social media, doesn't mean you don't say stupid ass shit, right?
Right.
So. It's probably, she probably will win. Depends, just because it's the NDP have held that forever. They have such a huge toehold in the riding. It's probably likely that she will win.
They don't care who the nominee is; they just are going in and voting NDP. So
we do the same thing in Alberta with Conservatives at a federal level, right? I mean, that's other than 2 ridings, I think in all of Alberta. We vote Conservative, right? We do the same sort of thing here. So
on the federal level,
federal level, okay, that was a long one.
A little bit long. Well, we did some explaining along the way.
Yeah.
I think it's up to the NDP party to be responsible for who they nominate for, and it's not just the NDP, but we're talking about the NDP here.
You have to vet them out,
for every party on every level to be responsible for who you are putting out there, So, I mean, if she wins this election, they're going to have to deal with her and her opinions on an official level. So
that happened here, right? And not, as you said, it happens everywhere, and not that it matters, but it's the NDP that did that here in Alberta several years ago, right? When the NDP went through their historic downing of a 50-year dynasty of the Conservative Party, the PC Party of Alberta, they had 3 candidates that were in university that got elected. Did you know this? I think I told you this before, right? But yeah. So those 3 university students then had to put their university studies on hold while they ran the government. Right? Which is what? wait, what? You want people that, again, that's having a university education is not a requirement to be a politician, right? But you want to, but that's what the NDP did, rather than vetting them out, because they just wanted to run people in ridings, that they took whoever showed up. These 3 students showed up, and it turns out they won. So now they can't finish their studies. Of those 3 candidates, one driver, something or another driver, she did the same sort of thing that this woman did. She supported smoking pot before it was legal in the country and in the province, and had her Facebook post, whatever, with her wearing a T-shirt of the weed leaf on there, and caught a lot of shit for this. A couple months after this, she had some sort of wasn't very articulate in the words she was using, and said something inappropriate, and basically was just kicked out of the NDP party until she had some sensitivity training and whatever else was going on, right? So that's the same woman here that did this. The other guy is currently today under investigation and facing jail time for breaking into Alberta Health Services and accessing the medical information of the previous premier of Alberta.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Yep, I know that one.
And he was just highlighting, well, I just wanted to do it to show that there's errors in the system and that anyone can do it. Yes, but you admitted to it, which is problematic. right? What are you doing? So this is the vetting part that we're talking about, right? Maybe he should have stayed in university and finished his education before he, right? But anyway, anyway. All right, we'll move on to the next one. What's this one? Connor McDavid and honoring Nickelback at the Juno Awards. Yay. This is an ad. This is Motor One. This will be a really quick one for us. Germany forges alliance with 7 Euro nations to oppose 2035 ICE ban. All right, so this is motor1.com. I don't know most of those words. I'm not really sure what this article is about. Let me just open this up. Forges an alliance with 7 Euro nations to oppose the 2035 ICE ban. I mean, I bet you this is, well, I don't know. I don't know what the ICE ban is. The fact that it's Motor One, this is probably some sort of emissions, I would guess.
Yeah. I can't remember. I've read ICE before. Seems to me that European Union has banned, well, it hasn't banned, it's reduced emissions to 0%.
That's it.
By 2035, which effectively eliminates fossil fuel vehicles.
And that's in less than 10 or just over 10 years, right? 2035.
Yeah, I believe that's what ICE is about, though I can't remember what it exactly stands for. I'd have to look it up here.
It's okay.
But I do seem to remember catching an article about this some time ago, a couple of months ago, whatever it was. And that I believe it's the European Union Council. I'm not sure but they passed this law for the European Union, and they are going to. I guess you couldn't ban it per se. So what the workaround I assumed was that they wanted it'll be 0% emissions. By 2035, and by de facto, that rules out any fossil fuel car. So
in Europe,
Germany, being a big manufacturer of automobiles and all, along with probably 7 other Euro nations, are opposing this for economic reasons. I would have to assume.
Well, I don't know if they're opposing. Well, okay. Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so I'm just assuming it's going to be based on economics, that you're going to be shutting businesses down.
Yeah.
That cannot. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule. If you produce less than, I can't remember what it is, but like 2,000 cars a year, then this wouldn't apply to you. So some small-time manufacturers could continue producing vehicles, but Germany may be arguing here, and I'm guessing, spitballing right now, is that that's not enough time for the German auto industry, and they want to get support from other Euro nations to make that kind of grandiose switch from probably a predominantly fossil fuel industry right now to a completely non-fossil fuel industry. So you'll have to go ahead and read the article and see where we're on with this.
The EU proposal wants automakers to reduce CO2 emissions from new cars to 0 by 2035. So that's exactly what Who Cares just shared. Yeah. In the foray into preserving the environment, automakers within the EU now have a deadline to meet. However, not every member of the EU agrees. In a report by Reuters, which is a reputable news source, news provider, Germany has formed an alliance with several other European nations to oppose the said ban on the internal combustion engine, ICE.
There you go. Okay.
There you go.
Yep.
7 countries are this. So why is this important? Again, just to expand a little bit further on that, Germany is the largest country in the EU and has the most population base. Right? I don't even know what the population numbers of Europe is, but collectively, I would say it's got to be close to 1 billion of all 30-ish countries that are there, maybe even more than that. If there's 8 billion people on the planet, 1 billion in China, 1 billion in India, 1 billion in Europe is reasonable, right? Another billion in all of Africa. We're at 4 billion there. We got to come up with another 4 billion people somewhere.
Right.
And because, as I said, Germany's makes a lot of cars because it's the largest country. It stands to reason that they're part of this, right? So their economy will take a really huge hit for this. Volkswagen, right? Volkswagen a couple of years ago got in a ton of shit because there's a huge push to reduce emissions, and Volkswagen's answer to reducing emissions was to write a sub-program in their computer thing to say it spit out less emissions than it actually did, and they had to pay a huge fine for basically lying to the public. Right? So, I mean, that's one way around it. Probably an ethical issue there, but that's one way around it.
Probably an ethical issue.
Well, yeah. If
If
profits,
you're saying probably an ethical issue, I'm worried about your ethics.
I don't have any ethics. I have morals.
You have morals, okay.
Yeah, I don't have any ethics. The 7 countries involved are all their transport ministers recently held a meeting to discuss the change. Needs to change at once. The approach seems wrong, pointing out there's a climate neutral way to run ICE. Yeah, I'm sure there is. That said, it's reported that the newly forged alliance is heeding for a separate category of ICE vehicles that could run on carbon neutral. The EU's latest move towards prohibiting the sale of new gasoline and diesel cars by 2035 happened last month. The new legislation requires automakers to reduce CO2 emissions to zero. They'll also mandate a 55% reduction in CO2 emissions for new cars and 50% for vans by 2030. So that's only a couple of years away, right? That's a handful of years. The EU will eliminate its zero and low emission vehicle incentives by 2030. Manufacturers produce between here's what Who Cares was just talking about. Manufacturers that produce between 1,000 and 10,000 new cars annually will have until 2036 to comply with the new rules. So you get 1 extra year. Okay. While manufacturers registering fewer than 1,000 new vehicles annually could remain exempt from the regulations. Several automakers have already taken steps in testing the alternative fuels, such as blah, blah, blah. Even Toyota, right? So that's the article. So this, regardless of where you stand on the climate change debate, I had a professor that's here in Calgary that he opposed climate change, and he taught that he wasn't hiding the fact that he said climate change is the belief that people have of climate change is false, right? And when I was in university, I disagreed with him, but as I've gotten older, again, this is now probably 20 years or so. And who cares? I see that smirk there. This is part of this.
Well, I just find it very coincidental, the idea that we were just talking the political side of it, where students, have these points of views, and then they enter the real world, and here you are, like when I was a student and I disagreed with my professor, and now you're saying now that I'm in the real world, but I just
that's exactly right. It'd become a little bit more clear in my thinking is the point I'm trying to get at, right? And my university professor basically said, oops.
More. You said oops?
No, that's the timer. His push is that the sun drives the climate, right? It's not human interfering, right? I don't deny that climate change is occurring. Absolutely, it's occurring. 100%, right? Or 99.9% climate change is occurring, right? But it happens on such a scale that the humans, don't even see, they don't even know. We've only kept accurate records for the last 150 years-ish, right? It's about 1818 or 1880 that we started tracking weather trends, daily weather reports, yada, yada, all those sort of things. Climate change happens over thousands of years. So even if it's 150 years of that, let's say 1,000 years, that's 15%, right?
I want to distinguish here for a second. Is this your point of view, or are you still talking about your professor?
I've come to agree with the professor that climate change. I'm not denying that. Well, that's his contention, so, which I also agree with. I disagreed
That's
with
fine.
that when in university. I've come to, as I've gotten older, I've come to align more with that thought process. Right?
Okay.
It's not to suggest that we don't have an impact, also, right? But it's just not enough information, right? This area where we live right now in Calgary was all underwater at one point in time. So that means the planet had to have been warmer than it was right now. And
Mm-hmm.
65 million years ago, when dinosaurs roamed the area and this area was all underwater, what caused the climate? What caused the planet to heat up? Dinosaur farts? Because it certainly wasn't a combustion engine, right? That's only
Right.
150 years old. So there's too much emphasis put on this is us, right? This is just ego. It's us that's doing it. Well, we have an impact for sure,
Mhm.
right? That's the thing. We have an impact on that, and I don't disagree with that. But I
Right.
think the impact is way overstated because history shows that the planet has these cooling and warming periods well before man.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you explain those other things? It can't just because just this last 150 years we're responsible for it. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. And right, so that's what I think this thing here with Germany is talking about as well. Climate change is going there, and they want to ban CO2 emissions down to zero. I don't think there's a problem with that, right? It's you have to adjust your economic systems for a bunch of different reasons. They don't want to have a radical impact on their economic livelihood of their country
And
in 10 years.
this is ultimately the problem: is that you are facing the global warming and that whole concept of what we're doing to the environment against the economic issues of our society. The reality is that we would not be here talking to everybody today if it wasn't for the technological advances and this is all part of our society.
Yeah.
And our society, if we stopped, if we never started the fossil fuel use, if we could go back in time to the start of the Industrial Revolution back in about 1840 and say, hey guys, this is a big mistake. It doesn't seem like it to you, but 200 years from now, this is going to be causing havoc on global level. We have to stymie this. We would still be way back in our development, in our technology, in our our civilization. There's a cost that goes with what we have today.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we just throw environmental issues out the window, though, either. So there's a balance here that we're striving to achieve.
Yeah.
Right. So. And I can understand that, the places like the auto industry, or here we are in Alberta, the oil industry, we're talking about a major economic force that you're dealing with, and you just want to turn your back on it completely, and that's going to be, it could be very disastrous. Germany, and the oil industry, the auto industry are arguing that we can't achieve these in a 10-year period. Like, it's just not practical, right? And while we're making strides in our ability to generate electricity, hydroelectricity, we are just not at a position where we can replace fossil fuels with hydroelectricity yet. We just can't produce enough of it. So I can kind of get behind Germany a little bit here because, it's the same thing for Alberta as well as other nations that are fossil fuel dependent, as it were, as an industry. You need time to change these things over. So Germany has found 7 other nations to try and work against this or stretch it out or
I
do
think that's a
something with it.
I think that's a large percentage, by the way. So Germany plus the other 7 is 8. I think there's somewhere in the range of 30 countries in the EU.
Uh-huh.
Um, Obviously, with Scotland and Ireland and England dropping out of the EU, that's, I don't know, was that 30% ish, 28% of the EU is opposing this 2035
Mm-hmm.
ice ban, right?
Yeah.
I think it's so. Uh, also to that effect, Europe is much more liberal in their thinking than North America is. Well, we have very conservative views overall in North America, the U.S. and in Canada. Um, when you
Mm-hmm.
compare Canada and the U.S., our views aren't too dissimilar from each other because we have similar backgrounds. We kind of grew up the same sort of way, so we would have similar views. Versus North America's conservative thoughts versus Europe's liberal views, right? Um, so with our liberal federal government, who's really pushing, right, to for Canada to adjust to meeting CO2 levels, whatever those levels are, banning on this, putting lots of hits on the electricity industry um, or resources, right? Where do you think all those cars go? Like, I believe that Europe has, like Germany, I know for sure, but I believe the rest of Europe says as well that you can't have a car older than 5 years old, right? Because of the emissions. So where do those cars go? You know who imports a lot of those cars? Canada. So if Canada actually was committed to reducing greenhouse level gases, we would not accept these cars. These cars are not good enough for Europe and Germany, but they're good enough for us, right? The car's only 5 years old. It's still
Uh,
good. There's still lots of life to it, right? So
I'll
that
be honest. I wasn't aware that we were importing those cars. When you said what country does, my first thought was, to be honest, Mexico.
well, all countries, right? Europe just has to get rid of them. So we buy,
Yeah.
like Europeans buy this brand new car for $20,000. They sell it for 5. We get a really really good deal on it. We get a car that's 5 years old, and it kind of just filters through. China gets a lot of these cars. India as well, right? They
Okay.
Europe just gets rid of them because they're required by law to sell their cars. But if we want
Mm-hmm.
to, as I said, if Canada wants to reduce its CO2 emission or help meet those goals, we would not be importing those combustion engine
Right.
cars. We would be importing hydrogen fuel cells cars and electric cars and things like that, right? The
Mm-hmm.
electrical gas industry, or sorry, electricity, which some of my background was years ago. I worked for an electrical company and became well versed in this. When the NDP government came into office in this province, they put a law out to shut down coal-fired electricity plants. Now, the example, and I liken the example to this. Mrs. Frostmage and I bought a brand new car last year. All right, it's top of the line. Last year it was top of the line, and all the bells and whistles, really highly fuel efficient, all the rest of it. But every year, cars become more fuel efficient. So this year, a new car came out. Should we sell our car that we bought last year to buy this year's new car because it's more fuel efficient, less CO2 emitting, blah blah blah, than last year's model? That economically, that doesn't make sense to do that. We should ride the
No.
life use our car for the duration of its life and then buy a new car, right? So we're going to keep our car for 10 years. This brand new car we just bought, we'll keep it for 10 years. And then 10 years from now, we'll buy the newest car that's fuel efficient, blah, blah, all the rest of it. So this power plant is the same sort of thing. You get 50 years-ish. I don't know what the lifestyle of the lifeline of a power plant is, but if you have it for 50 years, they basically said, no, this plant is only 22 years old. You have to shut it down within 3 years. That's what the NDP government did, right? European, this article is saying the same thing. You have to make all your cars zero emission, CO2 emission, and then you have to get rid of them. Well, we'll take on those cars, right? So, all right, we talked a lot about this. Let's move on to the next one. I'm just
Okay. Yep.
Getting me riled up. Where's my mouse here? Okay. Oops. Mouse is acting up. Come on. Too much going on in the background that it's not. There we go. Okay. Police say Quebec crash was deliberate. Victims chosen at random. That's NAD. And here we go. Shamatea First Nation chief declares state of emergency. Who cares? This is you. This. I read the last one first.
Yeah. Okay. This is a video. Obviously.
This is a video. Yeah.
Yeah, I have nowhere to go on this one. I mean, I'm looking at a picture in the background, assuming some kind of fire, maybe on the reserve.
The fact that it says it's a First Nation chief is reasonable. That it's on a reserve somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, he's declaring, or the chief is declaring a state of emergency. So I'm guessing that some kind of fire broke out on the reserve that did significant damage, and so he's declaring a state of emergency. But I am really just guessing at this as to what it's about. You'll have to watch the video and.
I think that looking at that picture is reasonable that it's a fire, right? It looks like it, so I think that's reasonable. This is an article, and there's just a written one-liner underneath the chief declares state of emergency to just kind of give a highlight, and then it goes into the article, right, or the video. So the article underneath it says a Northern Manitoba First Nation, so right, First Nation chief declares, that's reasonable, it's on reserve. Northern Manitoba Nation reeling from several recent suicides and a major fire that left several families without homes has declared a state of emergency. Suicide is a very real thing, right? Media outlets collectively have made the decision not to discuss suicide. Right? Famous people die of suicide all the time, and they use some verbiage to state that, but they just make the statement and then they move on quickly. They don't actually look at why it is. And there's, again, that's a journalistic thing. So don't allow my next statement to be viewed as uncaring or unsympathetic because I do sympathize. Suicide is it's a real thing, and it sucks for everyone involved. But the fact that several recent suicides and a major fire, are those two things enough to declare an emergency? I don't know. I guess if there's several is usually more than 3, right? So if there's 8 people in the town and 3 commit suicide, that's probably there's something else going on there. If there's 10,000. 3 is pretty on par, I think, right? And it's my comment is not meant to be callous. But it happens, right? It's to that end.
Trying to put it in.
Yeah. I think suicide is people feeling a lot of pain, and they just want the pain to stop, and they believe that the only way that they can make the pain stop is through a suicide. That's my belief. I don't have any psychology courses under my belt. I've never taken a psychology course, but I do believe that about suicide. All right, this article here is a fire. That's what that picture is. And so this is an old folks home. This is a senior citizens home that's on fire here. 10 people had no choice but to leave. And all they could do was watch this fire rage. And the reason why, because the Shamatewa First Nations only fire truck is out for repairs. There it is. That's why they can't do anything, because they have a fire truck on their reserve and out for repairs. Saying the community's overwhelmed. So today he declared state of emergency. Tired, I'm hurt. I'm just reading what he's saying here. I am a blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
The First Nation was asked to help for displaced seniors fast, of course. The winter, that's not very much. There's not very many homes there. It's too late to ship trailers or the broken fire. Right. Even more troubling now for the chief is the mental health crisis facing youth. They have no future. Well, that is in line with what I just said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mental health is a real thing. It's a disease. And if you feel that there's no hope, you just want the pain to stop, and you believe that suicide is the only way to make that pain stop. So, okay. I mean, then the state of emergency going on there. I mean, how do we fix it? Put more money into healthcare?
Yeah, I'm guessing when they declare a state of emergency, they're probably looking for financial aid from the Manitoba provincial government and maybe the federal government as well.
Yeah.
To solve some of these problems, so
the immediacy needs housing.
They obviously need housing immediately for these elderly people. And then they've got the issue, if they're having that much trouble with their youth, they need to address that issue somehow. Way out of my, knowledge, and I couldn't even begin to comment what they need to do to address those issues. But there are people with that knowledge, and they can look at it. But they're declaring a state of emergency, probably looking for financial aid to solve some of their problems.
Again, I think this problem is much more complicated than this. In fact, it's not that I think that this problem is much more complicated, right? The immediacy is the housing that people need right now, because as you saw, their house is burning down. So you have to provide some place for them to sleep and to live for the next 2 or 3 days.
By declaring a state of emergency, what he's essentially doing is turning to the governments and saying, we need help here. Yeah. And certainly one of those helps will be financial help, so that they can build homes or get trailers or whatever is required to look after these homeless people.
Yeah. And then the mental health that's
essentially what they're doing. Yeah. Well, they've got another issue that they have to deal with, but they didn't just suddenly develop a state of emergency when it comes to the deaths of these young people. This is obviously an ongoing thing. The fact that a fire broke out and burned down an old folks' home, and that there was no fire truck available to mitigate that damage, is something completely separate. He's dealing with two issues here.
Coincidental.
One was spontaneous, coincidental. One is spontaneous, happened out of the blue. Well, another is an issue that is ongoing and very well may be a runaway train with them.
And that was kind of where I was going with this, right? One is the immediacy right here, right now. And then the other one is actually a longer term to deal with it, right? And so I think, frankly, whatever social issue we put on, like we decide to put our hand in the hat, stir it around and pull out, the social issue will more or less be the same sort of process. You have to have and do something right now in the immediacy for the people that are suffering from whatever the social issue is, be it homelessness, hunger, underemployment, and then you have to address the long-term ramifications of how to avoid that going forward, right? If you don't teach people how to get some of these life skills, and they don't learn what those life skills are and how to deal with some of those life things, you're going to have the same problem 30 years from now or 20 years from now when they become adults, right?
Yeah.
UNICEF kind of does this thing as well, right? At Christmas time, when we were kids, we walked around with a little box collecting coins, change. Frankly, I think that's erroneous. We probably shouldn't do that, right? Which makes me sound like a dick. But it's better actually to probably educate the mothers than it is to educate the children, right? But there's not the same emotional attachment to saving the mothers as it is saving the children. But by saving the mothers, you deal with this long-term problem because they learn the skills, they can learn the skills, they share those skills with their children, and the children, as they get 20, 30 years from now, hopefully avoid the situation that they're in right now, right? That's how you deal with both of these things. Give them some money right now to feed them, to give them a home, to give them a helping hand up, whatever the case may be, but you educate so that they break the cycle is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Just finishing off this article, a teenage girl recently commits suicide after asking for help, right? Which is in line with what I just said. She asked for help and she couldn't get it. Last Wednesday, the girl's mother also took her life. So that's probably in a response to grief of losing her daughter, right? And couldn't deal with the loss of her daughter committing suicide, and thus she committed suicide herself. And that's tragic. Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Tragedy can be traced back to the government, to our beggars in our own country. It's interesting that they use that term. Breaks my heart to be sitting here today. This is another woman here. It looks like she's a council person of a mother cutting down her daughter, her baby girl. First Nations also dealing with violence and addictions. Again, this is everywhere, right? And conflicts between locals and police. Again, this is everywhere. Court hearings have been moved to Thompson since the band office hasn't had heat or water for 2 years. Holy shit. There's another picture of the house that's of that elderly home that's burnt down. Yeah. I mean, that's what we got to do, I guess, right? Get some funding, some immediacy to deal with problem right now, and then society. I don't think it's limited to this First Nation, although it's the First Nation in this story is being highlighted, but I don't think they're unique having to deal with that, right? So
probably not at all.
Sure. More money, more funding, more helping, more education, having resources for people to be able to reach out is important. On that, let's call that, because I'm just looking at the time. Where holy smokes.
Yep. I'm watching.
You're watching the time? Yeah, I'm trying to be more cognizant going forward, right, of these things. Who cares? Do you want to comment about Yuck Yucks right here? Let's give a word shout out to our sponsors.
Yuck Yucks Calgary is our sponsor. I am affiliated with the club.
Don't tell them that.
Don't tell them that. But then I can't tell them the part about the free tickets.
Oh, okay. They want to know about that. Tell them about that.
Tell them about the free tickets. So, leave a comment. This will be uploaded to YouTube as well. Leave a comment in Twitch or leave a comment in YouTube that you would like some complimentary tickets to the show. It is Calgary's, the Calgary Yuck Yucks Club only. I cannot do anything for the Toronto Club or the Vancouver Club or any other club. But if you want to come see a show, you're here in Calgary, you're happen to be visiting here in Calgary and want to check out a show, I will hook you up with some tickets. Like I say, just leave us a comment.
Absolutely. And thank you for connecting with Yuck Yucks. Who cares? And offering that. That's very gracious, and it really does help out, I think. We're going to finish the stream here. Just a highlight for later on this week. Who cares is not going to be available on Thursday, so I just have to look at my schedule and see what's going on. More likely than not, I'll be here by myself on Thursday, but we'll see what happens and what's going on. We'll figure it out. But outside of that, we should be back at it, regardless to our regular scheduled program next Tuesday at this time, right? Between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. Even with the time, the daylight savings time, we'll still be at 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So that being said, we're going to call that an end. Say